Hope I'm not having an internet issue now. Okay, there we go. In 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back, everybody, to Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Also heard on the radio, 1015 KDON and 840 KXNT in Las Vegas, home of your Las Vegas Raiders. Scott Gulbransen, along with my broadcast partner, Mr. Moe Moton. Mo's a senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report. Follow him on X at Moe Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. The show, SNB Today. All right. You wanted scalps. You got them. The Raiders fire Chip Kelly after the disaster that was the Cleveland Browns loss at home for the Raiders. The most expensive coordinator in the NFL, earning $6 million a year. He gone. That's right. Chip Kelly fired after Sunday's performance, if that's what you want to call it. Also, his right-hand man that he brought in, Bob Bicknell, also let go on Monday. So the Raiders cleaning a little house. There's still a lot of dust bunnies and dirt and grime all over the place, especially on the offensive line and the running game. We'll get to that in a minute. But the Raiders making moves seemingly weeks too late to make any huge difference, but change has obviously come to Las Vegas and into Henderson on Raider Way. Mo, let's jump into this. I mean, the Chip Kelly stuff, Nostradamus in spades. Last week on this show, you said Chip Kelly on the hot seat, despite the money, which is one of the things that you had mentioned might be a reason to not let him go during the season. Guess what? It was so bad for Pete Carroll and company on Sunday against the Brownies that he couldn't do anything. He had to deflect again, as he did during the press conference after the game. He says, Chip Kelly, thanks, but no thanks. It's time for you to move on. I know you're not surprised. I'm not surprised, but Raider Nation wants more. Talk about this firing of Chip Kelly and what the Raiders can do, if anything, to improve this offense over the rest of the season.
So if you tuned in last week, you heard me say Chip Kelly's in hot water, and I felt this way after one. After Pete Carroll criticized the offense, number one, and number two, after Pete Carroll said after the Cowboys lost that he took over or he had influence over the game plan. Pete Carroll's a defensive-minded head coach having heavy influence on the offense. What do you need Chip Kelly for? So when this performance, or whatever you want to call it, happened last Sunday against the Cleveland Browns, you had to know that Chip Kelly was probably on the way out. I thought it would happen in the offseason, but it was no way Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll were going to come back together. I think they should both be fired. So this is the first step. But this is the elephant in the room, Scott. Firing Chip Kelly is going to make you feel good inside because he's the offensive coordinator and you figure he's the leader of that offense, right? Fine, I'll give you that. But it's not going to change anything. You know why, Scott? Because the Raiders are absolutely awful on the offensive line. Everyone could see that. The Raiders' offensive line is the worst in the league by a mile. And Scott, guess who's the offensive line coach?
Wait, who?
Brennan Carroll. Pete Carroll, after every game, criticizes the run game. Says we need to run the ball more. We need to do this with the run game. So he's heavily critical of the run game, the ground attack. You know who's the run game coordinator, Scott?
Hmm.
Hunt. So you would think after Geno Smith gets sacked 10 times and everyone is screaming, give the ball to Ashton Genty, that the run game coordinator and offensive line coach should be the first person or people to go. Not in this case. You know why? Because Pete Carroll's going to protect his sons. And I get it. Scott, you have kids. I don't. I get protecting family. But if you can't fire them when things go to you know what, when things go to crap, don't hire them. Because right now the offensive line is a major issue. It's the primary issue. And the run game, which Pete Carroll has been complaining about, or the lack thereof, is also a major issue.
Right. And everybody can see it. And this is, look, the NFL is a family business, but it's not, the Raiders are not a Pete Carroll family business. They're a Mark Davis family business. And
Right.
so it's a business. And guess what you got to do sometimes? Would I fire my own kids? You bet I would. My kids are listening, by the way. It is my birthday today, and so my kids are probably, "Oh, thanks, dad. On your birthday, you'd say you fire us." But listen, that you're absolutely right. This offensive line has given up 20 sacks, including 10 in the last 3 games, 10 against the Browns. Now, the Browns have a good defensive front, don't get me wrong, but 10 sacks, 10 sacks. If you missed it, 10 sacks. They can't run the ball, absolutely. Not only that, so you're right about, okay, you wanna take scapegoats, but you're taking Chip Kelly, easy one, okay. And did Chip Kelly do a great job? No, we heard Richie Incognito last week openly criticize him and say, "What you're doing is not working, but you keep rolling out the same thing." So Chip Kelly's got a lot to answer for, and he did with his job. He'll take his $6 million and go sit on a beach, okay? But this offensive line and what Brennan Carroll is not doing, and with the running game, which he's not doing either, is a travesty. It's a joke. And Pete Carroll, I don't care what you've done, respect due. You're losing some of your respect by people in the league because of how you're handling this situation. Now, Pete Carroll comes out, doubles down, Mo, in the post-game press conference about picking the offensive line he did for this game. We saw what happened last week against the Cowboys. He said, "Hey, well, you're not. We're in practice. We see these young guys." Because Vinny again asked the question, and God bless Vinny Bonsignor for being on top of the "Hey, why aren't you developing young guys?" question line. He says, "Look, we're in practice. We see these guys. These are the guys we wanted to roll with. They're the best opportunity we have." What? You're going to tell me the two rookies are going to do worse than that? How can they do worse than that, Mo? Really? I guess they could if they're a complete bust from a draft perspective. But how do you know if you don't put them out there?
You're right, Scott. And the funny part is, a lot of people caught a moment where it looked like Caleb Rogers is going to get in the game,
Oh my
but
gosh.
Will Putnam back in the game. The same Will Putnam who was benched after being so bad at playing center. By the way, center is Will Putnam's natural position. We saw what he looked like at guard against the Cowboys.
Yeah,
Didn't work out. So he's struggling at both interior spots, but you don't want to put in Caleb Rogers because Pete Carroll, I believe this was said that Pete Carroll was saying we don't want to put in the rookies to the detriment of winning. And I said this on the X. I said you're
horrible.
the detriment to winning right now are the underperforming veterans you have on the field. This is why you should be playing rookies and young guys because winning isn't happening anyway. So I don't know where the detriment to winning is coming from if you put these rookies on the field. They can't be any worse than what you already have out there.
And every national analyst I've seen, because these days, I don't care if people like this or not, these days it's harder to get criticism out of people because they're mostly former players, everybody's friends, and so they don't quickly go to criticizing people like Pete Carroll. But Ross Tucker, who I happen to like a lot, he's been on the show a couple times. Ross Tucker brought it up pretty early in the broadcast. He said, "Hey, you got to wonder when the Raiders are going to start going to the young players and developing these guys and see what they have." Now, I think that was Ross's gingerly way of putting what we've been saying. If he probably was 100%, and I'm not disparaging him at all, he probably would have said, "What is he thinking? Why isn't he putting these young guys in?" But that's exactly what he was thinking. It was a read between the lines statement in my view. So you see this coaching malpractice by Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll's legacy is being degraded by what he is doing. And there's no way in my mind, I don't care. And you're going to hear from Amy Trask. We're going to talk about something she said this week that blew my mind about the puppet master behind the scenes for the Raiders. We'll get to that in segment two. But Amy Trask talked about this situation and talked about the problems on the field. She actually said that Pete Carroll's not being able to coach as well as he can because of what's happening in the organization. I don't necessarily agree with her. I know she knows a lot about football, former CEO of the Raiders, love her, respect her, have a great relationship with her online, and she's been on the show too. I disagree with her. I don't think he's the right guy for the right time. That's the biggest issue. Okay. If this team was closer, than being one of, if not the worst team in the NFL, then I might agree with her. So we'll get to that in segment two. But Mo, this is clear. This is something I think that our fans our listeners, I should say, and fans of the Raiders have kind of recognized since about week 3 that this ain't working. And Pete Carroll, and the longer this goes on, Mr. Moton, the more you have to question the entire organization because what the hell is going on?
I said this 2 weeks ago. I'll say it again, Scott. And I basically just said it. If Pete Carroll, the Raiders have to identify and develop offensive linemen. That's the engine of your football team. Everyone knows this. If you're gonna be well about here winning in the trenches, right? Winning at the line of scrimmage. How do you do that with a strong offensive line? Show me the player that's made a significant improvement as far as development is concerned on an offensive line. And don't give me JPJ because JPJ was a quality interior offensive
Mhm.
lineman last year.
And they
So
tried
show
to ruin him.
right, and they play and they've moved this position. So show me the player who has made significant strides under this offensive line coach, Brendan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son. And if the Raiders can't identify or develop talent at that position, they're only going to go but so far. And if Pete Carroll's going to trust his son in identifying and developing that talent, I can't trust Pete Carroll. It's very plain and simple. You have former players like Richie Incognito coming out here and criticizing the Raiders' offensive line. It doesn't take Bill Walsh to see that the offensive line is, again, the worst in the league by far. Your quarterback just took 10 sacks. I know some of that is Geno holding the ball. I get that.
Yep.
But the Raiders can't even run block at this point. It's comical watching the musical chairs you're seeing on the offensive line group. Will Putnam is in the rotation, and Will Putnam's not a starting caliber player. He's a young guy, but he's clearly not ready to be on the field yet. Jordan Meredith, who they loved at center, now is at guard, and they pull him out. Alex Kappa, they got Alex Kappa now taking snaps at center. It seems like every time the Raiders offense has an issue, it's Alex Kappa to the rescue. You got
Oh my
Alex
gosh.
Kappa trying to catch touchdown passes. Alex Kappa competing with JPJ. Alex Kappa taking snaps at center. When did they make Alex Kappa the savior of everything that was an issue with this offense?
And
Like,
the remember the Bengals let him go. You see how bad their offensive line is, and they let
what
him
the,
go. I
what,
it boggles the freaking mind. I got to tell you this. But they fired Chip Kelly. Now the Raiders, 33 points in 3 games. They're the worst in the league at 15 points per game. Now they go on, they've had 5 play callers since 2023. Organizational crap. That's what that is. And Mo, I know you were talking to some people online, and I agree with this. Is this the worst team we've seen in decades? I say yes. People point to the 2006 team that were 2-14. That team, as you mentioned, had some good things going on defense. Now the Raiders have some good things. They played well against the Browns, not a huge deal either because it was the Browns with a rookie quarterback. But this team had, I mean, outside of Max Crosby, and listen, I know some of those guys on the defensive side are playing as well as they can, and they came up pretty nicely against the Browns. But this team defensively doesn't have much going for it either. So it's hard to find any silver linings. Ashton Genty is there, can't run the ball because of what's going on up front. Then you have Geno Smith, who's just had a brutal year. Don't make excuses for him. Yes, the offensive line sucks. It's not his fault that he gets sacked every time. But as you mentioned, holding onto the ball, there were plays where he had receivers open and he held the ball too long, couldn't hit his receivers, overthrew his receivers. So there's plenty on Geno here. Then Geno Smith, who got booed twice when he got on the field and when he left the field, decided what? I'm going to flip off Raider Nation. Okay. And remember back in the summer when he had that altercation at the youth football game? And everybody told me, oh, that's great. It just shows he's fired. Oh, what's wrong with that? Then he flips off the crowd in Seattle. Oh, what's wrong with that? Good. F them. Guess what? Now he's flipped you off. How you feel about that? Mo, this thing from top to bottom stinks like a rotten fish stuck in somebody's car after a nice fishing trip out at the lake.
the love for Geno Smith has quickly faded, Scott. I remember when Geno Smith gave the finger to Seattle fans and Raider fans were fired up about that because he was such a different personality than Derek Carr. But you know how it goes, Scott. When it's done to other people,
Oh yeah.
people clap here. And oh, that's good. I like my quarterback like that. But when things go bad and he's flipping, as you say, he's flipping you off. How do you feel about that? You
Yeah,
paying your hard-earned money to go watch him play and support this football team, and that's the thanks that he gives you. I believe there was an issued apology
there
on
was
that
from the team. To
for
be
that.
fair,
From
absolutely.
the
I'm glad you mentioned that.
team.
The team issued that. We'll see if Geno, when he has his next media availability, does that. Now, we also know last week people got a little bit upset with Geno because he did the, oh, blame it on me. Your kid didn't do his homework. Blame it on me, which was a little bit of a passive aggressive. And it's
Aggressive.
like, dude, listen, if you were performing pretty good, and I understand the offensive line doesn't protect him well enough, but he also has more than I'd say more than 70% of his performance is on him, not the offensive line. But that's just me. Okay. So we saw that. Then this week comes out, and I didn't expect it to be any better. It was worse. He didn't give more than 5 words per answer. It was very testy. People mentioned it, but I expected that because he got hammered and he didn't play well again. Okay. So, but again, apparently with Pete Carroll, unless you do something off the field that's illegal and you get arrested, I guess you don't get benched. It just doesn't happen, right? It's just not going to happen. You're going to keep rolling out the same thing. And again, that's an indictment on coaching, especially Pete Carroll. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about this puppet master thing. Is there somebody behind the scenes with more control than Pete Carroll, than John Spytek and Tom Brady? We'll get to that coming up next. It's Scott, it's Mo. It is Silver and Black today. Don't go anywhere. All right, Raider Nation, it's time for me to tell you again about Sleeper Picks, of course, a sponsor here of Silver and Black today this season, and it's about daily fantasy football. And Gully here, moi, trying to help you make some money. That's right, playing daily fantasy football. Since the Raiders are crapping up your football season, let me help you make it better. And we do that by playing daily fantasy football on the Sleeper app. If you don't already have a Sleeper app, go get it already. We've been telling you all year. Why is it taking you so long? That's okay. You can go do it now. You go there, deposit up to $100, and they will match up to $100 deposit for you to play daily fantasy football along with Mo and I by using the code GENTY. That's GENTY. Yes, he doesn't get used enough by the Raiders, but you can use that code to get a $100 match on your deposit to play daily fantasy football with me and Mo. All right, so let's go to Thursday night's game. Of course, we got the Packers and the Lions. Both teams, Packers doing really well. Lions up and down, just seem to be missing a little bit of the magic they had last year. But I'm going to start with the Lions on this side with Jared Goff, who I think is having still a good season. We have 175 yards is the most popular. I'm going 234 and a half yards for Jared Goff. I'm selecting that as one of my picks. Then Jahmyr Gibbs, who is just a fantastic player, going 65 and a half yards. I think despite as well as the Green Bay Packers have played, I like him to get that. In fact, I think he'll break 100, but I'm going with the 65 and a half yards. And then on the Green Bay side, Jordan Love, 228 yards passing. I'm going to go for the 175. So I'm not going for the 228 here. So if you look at my picks for Thursday night's football game, Mo will give his coming up again pretty soon. I got Jared Goff over 234 and a half yards, Jahmyr Gibbs over 65 and a half yards rushing, and Jordan Love over 175 yards passing. That's $20 picking on daily fantasy with sleeper picks, and that would net me $58.20. So why don't you join me right now? Again, sign up today and they will match up to a $100 deposit using the code GENTY. You can only get the code here at Silver and Black today. That's GENTY. Sleeper picks, all the rules and regulations you can find in the app or on the website. Not available in every state, but most likely in your state. Come join me and Mo as we play Sleeper Picks Daily Fantasy Football. Welcome back. Segment here of second segment. There we go. Of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast on the radio 1015 K-Dawn and 840 KXNT. SEMO, bad football even makes it hard to speak. Yes, I can't watch. This is so bad to watch every week. But anyway, I know all of you out there have been watching it for decades, and I'm sorry for that. But we're back talking Raiders football. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Also, if you're watching us on the video, same thing. Subscribe there, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that notifications bell. Okay, Mo, this thing blew me away. I know how much Raider Nation loves Amy Trask. Most of them. I've never encountered people who don't think highly of her as a former CEO of the Raiders when Al Davis was here. But Amy Trask went on CBS, and she I think she's done a couple other interviews too where she's talked about it. But she talked about, now, of course, people are coming to her and saying, "Hey, what's going on with the Raiders? How bad is it? What do they need to do?" So I'm going to play this comment and then we're going to talk about this because, again, it blew my mind. Here's Amy Trask on CBS, courtesy of CBS.
What are the biggest issues in your eyes and how can they be fixed?
Well, Jacqueline, you of course identified on field problems, and there are, of course, on field problems, but there are also a lot of problems off the field behind the scenes. And many people will assume when I say behind the scenes that I'm referring to Tom Brady, but I'm not. The individual who orchestrated Tom's purchase in the Raiders of the limited partnership interest in the Raiders, Jim Gray, has been working to orchestrate the purchase of an interest in the Raiders since Al was alive and we were in the process of selling a minority interest in the team. Well, he finally orchestrated that purchase, and he is now involved in every aspect or almost every aspect of the organization. And this is having an impact on the organization, not only off the field, but on the field. So, look, Pete Carroll is a very good head coach. But the problems we're seeing on the field are related to the problems that are rampant throughout the organization. They've got to fix the off field, behind the scenes issues in order to give Pete a chance to be his best, which he can be, and address the problems on the field.
Okay, Mo. I don't know where to start with this one. I know we don't have a lot of details, and we'll work on maybe getting Amy on to give us some more details. But just paraphrasing what she said there is that Jim Gray, you guys know Jim Gray from TV, right? I'm assuming most of you do. I know he is very good friends with Tom Brady. So I'm just blown away by this. Like Jim Gray is dictating some of the things that happen with the Raiders on the field, player personnel, other parts of the organization. Make it make sense, my friend.
I can't because Amy didn't provide enough details for me to
True.
make. And Jim Gray is involved in some form or fashion with the Raider organization that may be preventing Pete Carroll from being his best, head coach. Or that's what she said. That's what she alluded to. I can't speak on this because I have no clue what Jim Gray's involvement is with the Raiders. I know Jim Gray as a sports announcer, sportscaster, however we want to say it, but as far as a football mind, no clue what his capacity is with the team. It's an interesting nugget to throw out there. I would just love Amy to expand on that and give us more details.
Yeah, and I think I'm hoping she will. I can't imagine that we're the only ones out there, only people on a show or a content creator, whoever, journalist who has these further questions. Because I think what this gets to, though, Mo, is things we've been talking about for weeks here on Silver and Black today, which is John Spytek in control or is Pete Carroll in control? How much involvement does Tom Brady really have? A lot of Raider fans holding on to the animosity from the Tuck Rule game, I think, have wanted to quickly blame Tom Brady and say, "Oh, where's his blame in this?" And we've asked that question too, like how much involvement has he had? Did he have in the draft? Did he have on bringing on Pete Carroll? Did he have on Geno Smith coming in as quarterback? That's the type of stuff that we've been questioning for weeks. Now you add a completely different name, a complete wild card here with Jim Gray, and it only raises the number of questions that I think people from fans all the way up to analysts have because so much of what has been happening is perplexing. You don't understand why things are happening in the way they are. And maybe Jim Gray doesn't have as much control as Amy Trask, in her educated opinion, has. Maybe she's 100% right. Maybe she's somewhat right. I don't know. But this thing is weird and it just continues to show, at least from the outward perspective, the dysfunction from within this organization.
Scott, just another year, Raider Nation, right?
Yeah,
It just you say it all the time, and it's push back on you and say it's not dysfunction. What Amy Trask just alluded to sounds like dysfunction to me, right?
absolutely.
However Jim Gray is involved and whatever he's doing, that's not that's leaking onto the field product is are signs of or symptoms of dysfunction. So the Raiders have to figure it out on the field. They have to figure it out with their coaching staff. They have to figure it out, according to Amy, what's going on with their football operations and the decisions that are being made up top. And we say it all the time, Scott, and you said it earlier. It starts at the top. If the fish stinks at the head, then what do you think is going to happen the rest of the way? And until the Raiders figure it out up here, it'll never look right on the field.
Right. And a lot of people have wanted to hear from John Spytek going back all the way to the bye week where you and I thought perhaps he would speak. Some GMs do that. Some GMs never speak. Some GMs speak a lot. Like there's a lot of GMs in the league who will talk to reporters at various times during the season. They have a better relationship. They're more seasoned, whatever the reason is. We have not heard zilch from John Spytek. I'm not saying that that's out of the ordinary. Again, some teams are that way. The Raiders have been notorious about not being public or addressing things publicly. I was glad to see them address the Geno Smith flipping the bird to the fans at Allegiant Stadium on Sunday. That was a very good move, I think, by the organization. Mark Davis has obviously done it at various times when there's been either catastrophes or some dysfunction that's happened that they addressed. The John Gruden thing, of course, all that stuff, where they kind of have to. This thing though was weird because at this point, and again, full respect to Amy Trask, I have no reason to doubt her, but this is weird, and this is, I think, maybe I'm wrong. I think it's gonna gain some more steam because people are gonna reach out to Amy and say, "Hey, give us some more, tell us exactly what this is," as much as she can, because she clearly has sources from within the organization. But there needs to be something addressed here because when you have the disaster on the field and now it's leaking over off the field. We saw Max Crosby, who's always kept it together. You got to respect him for that. Max Crosby, Landon Roberts were arguing a little bit on the sideline. That's in the heat of battle. I don't put too much into that ever. And especially when a season is where it is now for this team, you start to see frustrations boil over. So I don't worry about the on the field stuff. But this off the field stuff with two coordinators fired before Thanksgiving, your team is at the bottom of the league and can't perform and gets worse every week. You sort of have to come in and you have to settle the waters as much as you can. And I just don't see that. I see doubling down on the same old messaging, even Pete Carroll. So Mo, I just don't understand what the organization's thinking. I'm not saying they can change what's going to happen on the field. It's too late for that. You're right. But the rest of it, you need to assure your fans that, hey, we understand we're struggling. We know what's going on, and here's what our vision is. Here's what we need to do. You're just not hearing it from the organization.
And this is why I say that this team is worse than the 2006 team and the 2014 team. So, Raider Nation, if you're listening to me, tell me what is the worst Raider team that you've watched. And I continue to say it's this year's 2025 team because in 2006, you mentioned it earlier, that team was third in total yards allowed. So they allowed the third fewest total yards. They were number one in passing yards allowed. They allowed the fewest passing yards. And people will say, well, because offenses didn't have their foot on the gas pedal because Rays were getting blown out. And I get that, but isn't that the case this year? The
Mhm.
offense about just as bad as it was in 2006 with more accomplished coaches in place. You have Pete Carroll, a Super Bowl winning head coach. You have Chip Kelly, who's been around the league, college and pro. My expectations were much lower in 2006 than they were in 2025 this year. So that's why I feel like this year's squad is worse because my expectations were higher coming into this year. You bring up 2014, and I know that team went 0-10 to start the season, but that team also finished the season 3-3. The
Yeah.
Raiders has games left, Scott. Are the Raiders going to go 3-3 for the rest of the way? This team may go 2-15. I listed the schedule on X Sunday night. They're going to play some teams. 5 of the next 6 teams they play are jockeying for playoff position, and they have pretty good defenses, defensive lines, or premier edge rushers. They got Khalil Mack coming up off of a bye. They have the Texans who just sacked Josh Allen 8 times. The Broncos lead the league in sacks. The Philadelphia Eagles are coming up. Jalen Carter against the Raiders' interior offensive line is going to be a mess. The Giants, while they have a poor record at 2-10, Brian Burns has 13 sacks. Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter. They got a trio of edge rushers there. The Chiefs are still battling for playoff position. Chris Jones, George Karlaftis. Where are the wins coming in for this Raider team with all the expectations that we had in the offseason?
And you mentioned, even if you look at that schedule and say, I don't even know what you can call a winnable. I went on X before the Browns game and said, I got a feeling today the Raiders might eke this out. Boy, was I
I
wrong.
thought,
I mean, I was just trying to find some positivity, thinking, okay, home game, Brown. And you know what? The Giants are better than the Browns. I know the records are similar, but look at the Giants. They've been in games. They've been in games because of that defense, like you said. And so I don't give any chance. I'm not picking the Raiders at all the rest of the way. I think you're right. I think they go 2-15. I really believe they do. And some people out there going to be glad because they feel they'll be able to get a quarterback. And that's fine. But in this situation, I'm just it's so bad that I think at this point, if you're a Raider fan, yeah, you're upset, but don't get too upset because it is what it is. It's just done. And the Raiders, even Sunday against the Browns, the TV analyst said, well, when the Raiders got down 2 scores, they said, this game might be over because the Raiders can't score. So imagine you get down between 10 and 14 points when you're only scoring 15 a game on average. You're done. And that's what you see with the Raiders. These games can be over by halftime. Well, they could come back. No, they can't mount anything. And now, yeah, Chip Kelly's gone, but it's not going to get much better. Mo, before we get to the break and get to people's calls, I should say, Raiders versus Chargers, we got to look forward. We have all this news and stuff for this show, but we got to look forward at the game on Sunday against the Chargers. Is this I can't do anything but pick the fact that I think the Raiders lose by 14 to 17 points at a minimum. What do you think about this game? I don't think the Raiders can mount anything to beat this Charger team. Not that they're unbeatable, because they have been beat by lesser teams on their schedule, but I don't see any way they can compete with this Chargers team coming off a bye.
The Chargers have their own offensive line issues. They got two essentially backup tackles. Justin Herbert's also getting whacked behind that offensive line. But here's the issue, Scott. Their defense is still respectable, and as I said, Khalil Mack is probably going to have a sack party as Miles Garrett had with his buddies last Sunday. So the Chargers are also coming off of a bye, so they had an extra week to prepare and rest up after they got beat badly by the Jaguars, coached by Liam Cohen. So I agree with you, Scott. I don't see how the Raiders keep this one close. A lot of people believe in the coaching firing bump. Usually, when a coach gets fired, you get a re energized team. I don't think it's going to work because I think the players know, as we all know, there's a big problem with the coaching staff, and it's Brendan Carroll. And I think the players are not going to say that publicly. They're not going to criticize the head coach's son, but the players know what's going on. And I don't think you're going to get a re until there's a change there.
Yeah, no, and even if Pete Carroll finally plays some of these rookies up front, what do you expect out of him in the first game? Maybe better performance, but to get better on the offensive line for the Raiders doesn't take much at this point. And that's not going to. It doesn't mean it's going to be good enough to stop that Charger defense from pressuring Geno Smith, who under pressure is worse, at least a little bit worse than he is not under pressure. It's just a disaster. If I'm the Raiders, I would go to Pickett or even Aiden O'Connell just because you just need a change. Sometimes you just need a change. Give some hope to that offense to see if they can do something a little bit different. How can it hurt when you're this bad? It can't. Now, it could stay the same, and then you go back to Geno. Okay, fine. No harm, no foul. But right now, I don't care how much you're paying the guy. You want a spark, at least bring somebody in and do something differently, even if the results aren't much different. But anyway, that's all I'm going to preview the Charger game because I just don't think there is much to talk about. It's hard to talk about the football when it's that bad. All right. When we get back from the break for the final segment, we're going to talk to you guys. We're going to get a few phone calls in here on Silver and Black today. So don't go anywhere. You're up next on the Raider Nation Switchboard. Welcome back. Time for the home stretch here on Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Also, if you're listening to us on 101.5 KDON and 840 KXNT in Las Vegas, welcome to you and thank you for doing that, as well as you power up those Odyssey radio stations in Las Vegas, Nevada. Of course, Las Vegas, Nevada last weekend. You know, Mo, I'm a big F1 fan. They had the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which was awesome. I had to stay up late to watch it because it didn't start up till 11 p.m. Eastern time. But it was fun to watch and had some friends out there, had a great time despite the chilly time. You know, in Vegas, Mo, it gets to be 55. People are, you know, they're wearing earmuffs and that kind of stuff because that's cold for the desert. So anyway, and those of you who were at the Raider game and then after the race, woof, sorry about that. But hey, Vegas is always a good time. Mo, we're getting ready now to listen to some of the listeners and what they have to say about this. But I find that most Raider fans, at least the ones that talk to us, my friend, are sort of at the acceptance level of, hey, it is what it is. They got a clear house at the end of the year, so I'm just not going to invest as much emotionally in this team until I see what they're going to do. You see the same thing?
When you don't hear from Jacob from Fresno for about 2 months, you know things are bad, right?
We heard well, only once we heard from them.
Jacob from Fresno was MIA for about 2 months, so you know if he's checking out, then a lot of other fans are. But I will say that the acceptance has come early. I think by around the end of September, before Halloween, a lot of fans could just see the writing on the wall. And unfortunately, it's been like that for the past few seasons, where by September, you're like, this team isn't going anywhere.
Yeah. It's sad. So, but at least, you know, at least on Sundays you'll be disappointed, but you'll be like, "Meh, okay, whatever." Draft, NFL draft is in April of 2026. It'll come
Mm.
faster than you think. All right. Let's go out to our first call. I'll put this guy up first because he texted me during the game. He had picked a win for the Raiders. I think 23-16 or somewhere was his prediction. And I said 23 points for the Raiders. Whoa. That's like an offensive explosion. Explosion. Of course, it didn't happen. I picked them to make 21 points, and boy, was I wrong. I love people have no problem reminding me multiple times when I'm wrong, which is all fair. I get it. Here's our man Tarek up in Chicago.
Hey, Scott Mo, this is Tarek. Oh, goodness gracious, guys. All I could do is laugh. I was at the site, spent 60 minutes at a circus, watching the circus. Like, my goodness, you guys, is this arguably the worst Raiders team of all time since like 1960? You could make a case for it. We just gave up our 10th sack. We clearly have the worst offense, defense, and special teams in the entire league, and it's not even close. The Boo Birds were raining down. This entire coaching staff should be fired before the end of this evening, and we all know that's not going to happen, but it better happen at the end of this season. At this rate, if Pete Carroll or anybody on this coaching staff returns, I'm gonna semi-retire my fandom. Like, I'm always gonna be a fan, but I'm just gonna laugh and mock them at every step they take to try to get back to even anything resembling relevance. Mark Davis is a con man. You see the camera on him. He's laughing and smiling as if he doesn't have a care in this world. And he fleeces everybody. He cons people, and he goes on about the alumni and the history and the greatness of the Raiders in its future. The man is a freaking con man. And where is John Spytek in all this? I'm really, there's, I've been reading that he is safe, but you better give him some authority. You better give him some discretion. And John Spytek should have the authority to fire this entire coaching staff. And for Raider fans out there who are actually bringing up the name John Gruden, with all due respect, turn on your brain, okay? Turn on your silver and black brain if you think that John Gruden coming back is the solution. I don't want to hear anything about AOC. Give us a break. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving week. We saw who the real Thanksgiving turkeys are. They were wearing silver and black today, all of them. Have a good week, guys, and looking forward to your show. I'll talk to you later. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
There you go. Tarek. Boy, that was a doozy. Good for Tarek.
Love it.
Hey,
Love
he's
it.
telling it like it is. He's making our good friend Evan Grote, who used to host the Just Pod Baby podcast, who retired after last year, his fandom, look pretty smart, I guess, in some ways. I know people rail against that, but that is what it is. But he brings up a good point there, Mo. I want to address with you and get your thoughts. And we sort of talked about it earlier with the weird Jim Gray puppet master thing earlier. But if the Raiders don't fire Pete Carroll after this year, I know you shudder to think if that doesn't happen. Listen, we've heard from Max Crosby. He hates the fact that they have all these different coaches. But if you don't, after what a dumpster fire this year, a dumpster fire on top of a dumpster fire on top of a dumpster fire, it's like a toxic waste burn. If they don't do it, what are you saying to the players? And does a Max Crosby, do other guys say, hey, after what happened this year, this is what you're going to roll it back with? I'm out. Like what would happen to this team, Mo, if they don't make a change?
I honestly don't know because the Raiders are going to have a lot of turnover. They have a lot of
Yep.
expiring contracts. They obviously the core players going to be there. Brock Bowers, Ashley Genty, Max Crosby says he wants to be there for at least now. But they're going to have so much turnover next year. They're one of the teams that we're going to have the most players hit free agency in 2026. Pete Carroll could just bring in guys who buy into his program at that point. So I don't think there's a risk of locker room mutiny only because there's going to be change anyway, as far as the roster is concerned. But if you're Max Crosby and you're looking at this and you're coming up on Max Crosby will be 30 soon. Does Max Crosby think, hey, I want to play for an actual playoff contender because I don't see a pathway for this team to even be competitive? He may change his mind on Pete Carroll and say, I want out. And I think if Max Crosby stands up and says, if Pete Carroll's back, I'm not back, that may force Mark Davis or the brain trust that Mark Davis has to maybe rethink things if they want to keep Max Crosby happy. I know it shouldn't be about keeping one player happy, but somebody has to speak up about what's going on in that locker room. It has to be a leader, and Max Crosby is the leader in that locker room.
Right, and if Jim Gray decides that they need a new coach, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think that was my point. Not so much the entire locker room, because if you're Ashton Genty, you're coming off your rookie, yeah, you don't have the wherewithal to say, hey, I'm out if you bring back this coach or whatever. He's not in that position. Max Crosby is in that position. He's the only guy on that team, really, that is in that position. And again, I was not happy with Max Crosby going crazy about Antonio Pierce, but he flexed his muscle once. He could do it again, and we know Mark Davis listens to him, so we'll see. But I just think overall, if I'm Max Crosby too, I say to myself, well, to your point, if they clean out, bring in a young, exciting coaching candidate of some sort, whoever that is. People keep asking me who is that, and I really don't have a good answer yet because I need to look around the league and see who might be available. There are some names out there already, but if that's the case, then fine. Then I can say, okay, maybe we could turn this thing around quick with the right guy. If it's Pete Carroll again, I'm thinking, woof, this is nowhere near closer. You got to go get young on the roster, and you're going to have a 75-year-old coach. It doesn't compute. It just does not compute. All right. Thanks for the call, Tarek. Now we're going out to the Great White North, and I'm not talking about Northern California. Here is Jim from Canada.
Hi, it's Jim from Ontario, Canada. I've been a Raiders fan since the mid-'70s, back in the days of Kenny Stabler and Fred Biletnikoff and Mark Van Egan and so on and so forth. I've just started listening to your podcast, and I really enjoy it. My son put me onto it. I just wanted to make a comment that, over the years, it's been pretty difficult being a Raider fan. I've even gotten to the point now where our dog has a Raiders leash and a Raiders collar, and I won't embarrass her anymore by making her wear it. I'm so sorry to see that things have degraded to the point they are, and it's going to be a long time before this team regains some respectability and at least is competitive. Sorry to be so negative, but it's been a long time since we've had a winning season. Thanks very much.
Jim in Ontario. Thanks, man, for calling in, and generational. His son listens to the show. Thanks to you both for being part of the show here on Silver and Black today.
We're a
I'm
family. Really quick, not to cut you off. We're a family show, not the type
right.
of family that doesn't fire people that don't need to be in their job positions. When I say family position, we actually make changes around here when people aren't performing up to par. But
We do.
It's good to see that we are a family show.
And we had a lot of feedback after the last show where, yes, I'll admit I did curse a few times because we don't really curse that much here on the show. It's just Mo and I are just not that way. But at the same time, people were fired up that we were fired up. And I had one guy reach out to me. He's like, dude, I know you cover the team. You don't cover it as a Raider fan. And you were angry. And I said, yeah, but watching bad football makes me angry. He's like, yeah, I don't know how you cover this team. So anyway, believe me. But for fans like Jim, who's like, man, I don't even want to put that collar on my dog. That says a lot. And that, I think, goes to the point that this is the worst Raider team we've seen. And I just don't know how people survive that, especially on that coaching staff. But anyway, Jim, thanks again for the call. Now we're going out to Salt Lake City, keeping it cold. Armando, here he is.
Hey guys, it's Armando from Salt Lake. I called a few hours ago after the game, but we got some big news coming in, and so I wanted to call again because that call was null and void. In that call, since the listeners won't have listened to it, but you guys will have, I had said how I prefer the 2006 Raiders over this version, and that for the rest of the season, I would fire Carroll, Chip Kelly, all the Carrolls, and I would bench Geno Smith. In that time, we got the first domino to fall. Chip Kelly gone, so that's a big win. Second thing I wanted to bring up is this video of Geno Smith flipping off the fans leaving the field. He needs to go. He should not play another snap for the Raiders. There's no place for that on this team, in this organization. Al Davis would be absolutely ashamed right now. Fans pay their hard-earned money to watch and support this team. For that clown to do that, he's rolling in his grave. I don't see why that can't be conduct detrimental to the team. Void his contract. I want him gone. I want him out of the league. Kenny Pickett, AOC, Cam Miller. I don't freaking care at this point. I'm done with him. I'm done with Pete Carroll, all the Carrolls. This is a train wreck. Let's clean house, give this front office a chance to start fresh, and let's go. First domino fell earlier today. Let's see what the next one is. I am salivating, ready for the next one to come. I'm done with these fools.
There you
Armando
go.
from Salt Lake, out. Much love, guys.
There's Armando. Armando is not happy, and I don't disagree with him on Geno Smith. Remember, this is the guy who said that's why I get the big bucks while he was screaming at kids coaches on the field during the summer, right? But I was an idiot for making that an issue. When we talked about it on the show. So I don't disagree with him there. I know Raider fans aren't happy with Geno Smith anymore, not just because of the play, but because of what he did. He brings up all the salient points there. Now, on the Pete Carroll point, Mo, is there any way, any possible avenue where you see Pete Carroll dismissed before the end of the season? Any possibility?
I would say if there is a mutiny in the locker room, and I always say this, once you lose the locker room, once a head coach loses the locker room, there's no coming back from that. Especially when it comes to the leadership in the locker room. Once that happens, you have to fire the head coach, right? Because you're going to see a lack of effort on the field, and people have already said, fans have already pointed out to me, they feel there's a lack of effort out there. I think there's a lot of poor execution because of the coaching staffs and its practices. But once you start to lose guys, you have to turn the page. I think that is the scenario in which the Raiders would fire Pete Carroll. But I want to touch on something really quick, Scott. There are two things. Keep it short. Favoritism is a problem with this Raiders team right now. Pete Carroll plays favorite to Geno Smith and his sons on staff. So now you have his sons coaching in positions that they shouldn't be in right now. And Geno Smith is, in my opinion, while he says blame it on me, I have questions about accountability. Is he really held accountable, or is Pete Carroll patting him on the back and saying, "It's not your fault, Geno. It's the offensive line. It's not your fault, Geno. It was just a few tip passes. It's not your fault, Geno. It's just good defense we played." If you're having those type of comments to Geno Smith, then it's a lack of accountability. He should be benched. I was calling that he should be benched a month ago, and some people said
Yes.
no, that. I'm like, if he's not playing well, if he's not being held accountable, got to be benched. What I will say to Armando about Geno Smith and his behavior, again, Scott pointed this out months ago, and a lot of you came at him and said, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine. We need a little fire in our quarterback." Until that fire is turned back on to you, Geno Smith needs to get up in front of the public and apologize, because Armando is absolutely correct. These fans have been sitting up and watching and supporting this football team watch garbage, complete, absolute poor football for weeks, months, years, decades. And here you come in your first year with the team. You're flipping off fans who've been there for decades, supporting thick and thin, bad,
Right.
good, poor, firings, tragedies, all sorts of stuff the fans have been enduring. And here you come in a few months in, and you're mad because fans are giving you a hard time because you're playing poorly. Come on, man. Come on.
Yeah,
Come
and I agree with you. I have every reason to believe and expect Geno Smith, when he does his next media availability, which I
on.
believe might have been already before you watch the show, to apologize. I think he's going to have to. If the team apologized for him already, you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to have to as well. That's fine. Now, you can judge for yourself whether or not it's heartfelt and genuine. We'll see. But I always had been told, and tell my kids even to this day, words are words, judge people by their actions. So we've seen actions now 3 times in 1 year that reflect this kind of attitude. So take it with you will. I'll take it. If he's really genuinely heartfelt about it and you can sense that, fine, great, then move on. If not, then what'd you expect? That's what I would say. All right, we're moving on to Tar Heel Tom. Our man hasn't called back in a while. Here he is.
Scott, Mo, this is Tar Heel Tom. I'm pretty much in the third quarter, and I just got done with the 4th and 4 play where the Raiders took yet another sack. You know what? I'm not even mad at this point, but I feel like this is just poetic justice and poetic karma for Pete Carroll setting the offensive line starters for what they truly are, completely neglecting the third round draft picks that they had that they still fail to play, by the way. So this is just literally, I hope it opens the eyes of Pete Carroll. I don't really know what he's waiting for, but I don't know. I'm not even mad. I'm to the point where I'm now just going to go protect my peace and just stop watching and just go enjoy the rest of my evening. Because let's just face it, this offense can't do anything. Geno Smith just he's not being able to make his throws for one, and he has no time to throw. And Aston Genty, every time he gets the ball, there's somebody in the backfield. It's just atrocious. I don't understand what this front office and coaching staff is seeing to the point where they are playing the guys that they are. And it almost doesn't matter at this point because I just don't think they're going to make any changes. They're just going to be stubborn, egotistical, and stuck in their ways. I got it, buddy. But yeah, they're stuck in their ways, and it just really is what it is. But yeah, this team, I know the attitude is just win, baby. But you know what? Just keep losing, baby. Get that better draft pick. Anyways, over and out.
There's Tar Heel Tom from North Carolina. Mo, let me ask this question to you. After this disaster against the Browns ahead of this Charger game coming up, if we don't see those changes, i.e. Pete Carroll going against everything he's done all year, meaning we see those rookies like Caleb Rogers in there and see some changes, does John Spytek lose all credibility at that point? Because at this point, there should be no reason why John Spytek doesn't step in and say, "Hey, Pete, I'm sorry. It's not about winning games. It's about letting me see what you got on the roster. And so you got to work these guys in." I mean, is there any other way?
Scott, what did I say last week? John Spytek has to put his nuts on the table and say, hey,
Yes.
what we're doing. And if John Spytek can't do that, therein lies another flaw in the organizational structure. Your GM has absolutely no power. It's your GM is supposed to have the long-term view in mind, and that's where playing rookies come into play. You want to develop young players for the future. Head coaches usually have short term in mind. I want to play certain veterans now because I want to win now, or I could be fired. And I think Pete Carroll's in that realm now where you fire two coordinators over the last 2-3 weeks. Pete Carroll now, I think, is in trouble. He's probably, I would say Pete Carroll's coaching for his job because if this team finishes 2-15, I don't think there's any way Pete Carroll comes back from that. They have to respectfully mutually part ways. But John Spytek has to step in at this point. The Raiders are 2-9. They're confirmed to have a losing season, right? They already have 9 losses. They're not going to the playoffs. So I don't know why the conversation is being had with Pete Carroll saying, hey, look, Pete, I understand you're saying you don't want to play the rookies to the detriment of winning, but we're not winning right now. So you might as well play the rookies. What other options do you have? You're going to roll out Will Putnam again at center? You're going to roll out Caillou Blue Kelly again at cornerback? We have a we have third round picks at those very positions, Scott. At cornerback where we're struggling, cornerback number 2, on the offensive line on the interior, you have veterans who are massively underperforming. We have 2 third-rounders. I'm not talking about 6th-round picks. I'm not talking about undrafted guys. I'm not talking about 7th-rounders. We have 2 early-round picks who can't see the field over 2 of our worst starters. What are we doing? That's the conversation Spytek has to have with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I mean, I can't add anything to that because it's dead on, right? And I just think about, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Tin Cup with Kevin Costner about a golfer. And long and short of it, if you haven't seen it, I hate to ruin it for you, but it's a golfer who kind of loses it, then comes back, works his way all the way up. And in the biggest tournament he plays in, he hits the ball and it goes into the water. So he takes the penalty stroke and wants to hit it again, and he keeps hitting it. He keeps hitting it because he knows he can do it. He knows he can reach the green. He knows he can do it. This is what Pete Carroll's doing. He because he doesn't know any different. As he continues to remind us every time he speaks, I've never been in this position. I've never been in this position. Yeah, you haven't, and you refuse to believe you're in it.
Yes.
So you just keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and it ain't getting you anywhere. So there you go. All right, we're going to close it out with our good friend Dave Casper the Ghost. Here it is.
Hey, boys. This is Dave Casper the Ghost from upstate New York. Well, rhetorical question. When is rock bottom?
Now,
After yet another blowout loss to maybe one of the worst teams in football, this may be rock bottom for this year. I was listening to Moe's post-game show, watched it, I should say, and he said this is probably the worst team he's seen of the Raiders since he's been a fan. And I thought about that, and I remember in 2006, Art Shell's second time as a head coach, they went 2-14. They had a bed and breakfast. They pulled some guy out of retirement from a bed and breakfast place he was running, Walsh, I think. Aaron Brooks was the QB along with Andrew Walters. That was by far, for me, the worst team I've ever seen. But this team may be right there. As I'm calling, they just fired Chip Kelly, and long overdue. I don't know where we go from here. Like I said to you from week 1, I wanted to see progress, and it is just the record was almost irrelevant, and it has just gotten worse week in and week out. This team is in need of a total rebuild. I've been saying that from day one. I don't. For the longest time, I was saying you can't fire Carroll. You can't keep doing this carousel of coaches. But I don't think he's the man for this job. He's 74 years old. Does he really want to be part of a rebuild? This team needs to move on from a lot of these veterans, draft a lot of young players, draft a young quarterback, hire a young offensive-minded coach like a Brady from Buffalo or someone, or a Clint Kubiak, and rip it down to the studs, because this is by far one of the worst teams I've seen. And yes, Mo, I already have my paper bag out.
There's a disconnect between the front office and the coaches and the players, and I'm just speechless as how bad. After watching today's game, I'm just left in. I'm numb to it now. 47 years as a Raider fan, and sometimes it just boggles my mind how bad this organization is. We are the Jets of the West Coast or of the West.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad the Raiders are. They are. I was laughing at my Jet fans for years, and I'm saying, you know what? The Raiders are as an organization are as bad as the Jets. All right, boys. Talk to you soon.
Boy, Dave Casper, the GOAT, and Mo. So much of the same sentiment we're getting from I mean, he's 47 years a fan. So for you youngins out there listening, 47, most likely a lot longer than you've been alive. And you hear in his voice, as we've heard in so many calls today, this just it's what's the word I'm looking for here? It's a lack of energy, and you're just it's beyond defeated. It's just a acceptance and a realization that after all these years, the hopes of getting better have just fallen flat.
Shout out to Dave Casper the Ghost, because when he talked about the paper bag, when he said, "I got my paper bag out, Mo," I'll fill you in, Scott. After the game, after that, whatever we watched last Sunday, I had a paper bag on my Bleacher Report Live, and I told Raider fans that viewed my show, I said, the next time you go to a Raider game, get your paper bag, cut out the holes, and wear that bag inside the stadium. There has to be some form of protest or whatever show of unhappiness. I know Mark Davidson stated they're printing money. I get it. But you have to embarrass the organization for it to make the right decisions. I said it weeks ago. The Raiders were embarrassed by the Denver Broncos. What did they do? They fired Tom McMahon. And we've been saying for weeks that they had the worst special teams unit in the league. They were embarrassed again against the Browns. Geno Smith takes 10 sacks. Everyone's talking. Everyone's watching because Shedeur Sanders. Let's be honest. A lot of people were drawn to that game between two bad teams because of Shedeur Sanders. And while viewing Shedeur Sanders, they got to take a look at how bad the Raiders are again. And what did the Raiders do? They fired Chip Kelly. So this is why I say you have to embarrass the organization. I know past Mike behind bars saying he's selling tickets. I think you have to upfront and personal embarrass this organization. Of course, you got to hit them in the pockets too. But Raider fans, if you're listening to me, paper bags. It's that type of season. When you lose to the Browns the way the Raiders lost to the Browns, and things are going the way they are, and there's no progression, there's regression, paper bags. Get them out and go to the games.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I believe, again, as he touched upon, there's no argument anyone can give me of why Pete Carroll should remain coach of the Raiders, at least at the end of the year. Now, if it happens before, because like you said, that if they lose by 50 points to the Chargers or something crazy like that, like happened the other way around, and they got rid of Brandon Staley in LA, okay, whatever. Maybe there is a path to Pete losing his job this year. I just don't think so. But nonetheless, you look at his decision making. You seeing it on the field with the play, to your point about favorites with Geno Smith and the offensive line and other work. And you see it off the field with the poor construction of what, in my view, looked like a better coaching staff. Boy, was I wrong. With having to fire two coordinators, then you have your two sons who are position coaches who are doing poorly as well. So Pete Carroll has no justification for earning the second year of his job. He just doesn't. Not because Pete Carroll didn't forget how to coach football. Maybe not. Maybe he's so clouded in his judgment because of favoritism and because of hubris and ego that even though he hasn't forgotten football, he's forgotten how to win at football. Okay? And how to make the best decisions for the franchise, not for him or his kids. So I could see it happening. In fact, if they get blown out by the Chargers, I would love to see, because so many of you want to see it, and why not? I don't think it would work out totally, but hey, fire him and let Patrick Graham be the head coach the rest of the way. I don't know. I mean, whether I mean, I'm not saying that that's a great way to do things, and it's probably not going to happen. But again, it ain't working, so try something different. So I share the frustration that I hear in our callers and in the fans out there, Mo. But we'll see. There's no easy answers. That's the thing. No easy answers, and the no going backwards. A lot of people, oh, they were better under Antonio Pierce. They were still a bad football team under Antonio Pierce. Were they better than this team? Yes, I will grant you that. But Mo, what did you say 2 weeks ago? Raise your standards.
Yep.
And that's what I think people have to do.
Unfortunately, Scott, I just it's hard because and people say, you were fired up last week and we're in a professional space now. Like we don't identify as fans, just putting it out there up front. But we still watch these games and we still want to see good football. And if you're a fan of the game and a fan of the sport, it frustrates you when you see bad football from people who are supposed to be more knowledgeable than you, right? These coaches are in the building day in and day out. They obviously have their foot in the game. They have more knowledge than we do. Then how is it that they make such poor decisions and things that we're saying on a podcast into these microphones make more sense than what we're seeing on the field and in these decisions they're making for the roster? How is that possible? And that's the frustrating part about this whole ordeal.
It is. And again, it's better for us if the Raiders do well, because do some listeners not listen anymore because they're just tired of it? Yes. How many? I don't know. But believe me, it's better for the show from a professional standpoint for Mo and I to come on here and talk about wins. I know a lot of people like to always be negative. As you know from us, we're not that way. Although some of you were telling us last week not to be negative. I'm like, how could you not be negative? We're not being negative. We're just talking about how
Honest,
bad it is. That's not negative.
Scott,
That's reality.
we are talking about what the team is. Our show
Right.
is a reflection of how the season is going. If the season is going well, then we talk a lot of positive things. If the season is going poorly and it's one of the worst Raiders seasons in franchise history, we're gonna be honest about that. We're gonna give it to you straight. That's just how we roll.
It is. It is. And that's what we'll continue to do. Believe me, I would have liked to come on and talk about a win. I know all of you out there who want the draft pick would hate that. But, hey, I just look for positivity. So we'll see. All right, Mo, we're wrapping up the show. We sit here on Tuesday, November 25th, as I am a year closer to 60, which scares the hell out of me because that
Yeah.
number is crazy.
Yes.
Nuts, man. Just nuts. But anyway, let everybody know what you got coming up with your Bleacher Reports Live and with the writing side of Mr. Moe Moton.
Well, I'm not approaching 60, but I'm getting there. Bleacher Report Live. If you tuned in on Tuesday, I talked about why firing Chip Kelly is not going to fix everything. If you listen to the show, you know why I feel that way is because Brendan Carroll is still the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator. On Wednesday, I talked about the Raiders' remaining schedule. Will they win another game? Serious question. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be sassy. Are the Raiders going to win another game with the opponents they have on the schedule? They have another game against the Chargers, another game against the Broncos, another game against the Chiefs, the Texans, the Eagles, the Giants. The Giants are probably the best chance for the Raiders to win another game. But even if they do win that game, do you see them winning any of those other games against playoff caliber teams? I say no. This team could finish 3-14, Scott.
Yes, and I think there's a better chance that they finish that they don't win another game. And I'm not trying to just be negative. I'm just looking at it. But the NFL's a weird place, Mo. Sometimes, I mean, they could play the Eagles and beat them. You never friggin' know. The problem is I've just seen no improvement on any. The defense has gotten better, but the offense just doesn't score and can't do anything right. Now, you say, well, Chip Kelly's gone. Maybe maybe it will. Maybe, I don't know. They haven't, as we're recording, we don't know who the play caller will be for the Raiders. Watch Mo's live on Tuesday, and he'll probably have that information later today. But we don't know. Maybe it gets better. Maybe it doesn't. The offensive line is so bad. Maybe the rookies come in and light it up and prove Pete Carroll wrong. Another reason to fire him. But we'll see how it all rolls out. But we'll be here for all of it and all the pain with you as well. So we thank you guys for being with us, honestly, because despite this, we try to be your therapists here. We try to tell it like it is. We try to find the silver linings when there are some. There just haven't been many. So we'll continue to do that, but we certainly appreciate it. Make sure you follow Mo on X at Moe Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. The show is SNB Today. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio, on video as well. We certainly appreciate it. Shout out to our producer at Odyssey, Mr. Mike Robier, and on the radio in Las Vegas, Mr. Mark Bonilla. For Moe Moton, I am Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black Today. We will see you next time, everybody. Take care.